I have a confession to make. I like a song by One Direction. You may like One Direction. If so, that's cool. I'm not judging. I don't. I'm more into One Republic and Imagine Dragons and Foo Fighters. But there is one song I kind of like by One Direction. Okay, if I'm being really honest, I don't kind of like it. I really like it, and it's the song, "The Story of My Life." What I really like about it are the words. It's about, well, the story of my life, and there is a story of your life, right? You are writing a story of your life. I think it's actually helpful for us to think that way. Like, I am writing a story with my life. Every day I get to write another page of my story. Today is not an isolated day, it's part of my story. And when I get to the end of my life, it's all going to add up and tell my story, right? There is a sense in which you're actually telling several stories with your life, and they're kind of weaving together. There's a story you're telling as an employee, with your career, as a friend, as a spouse, if you're married, as a parent, if you have kids. There's a story that you're telling, that you're writing as a follower of Jesus. If you're a follower of Jesus, we get lots of people at Verve who are not, or just kind of checking things out spiritually. But if you are, you're writing a story. And think about this, there's a story you're writing with your money. Have you ever thought about that? That you have a money story, and that your money story is part of your life's story. In fact, Jesus would say that your money story is way bigger than just your money story. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He's saying, listen, what you do with your money isn't just about your money. It reveals your heart. You can tell who a person really is, what they really love, by what they do with their money. So the choices you make with your money, what you choose to spend it on, what you choose to sacrifice for, what you prioritize, what you save it for, it's all shaping your life's story. Your money story is writing the story of your life. And it's even more than that, because if you make the choice with your money to trust God with it, then you are asking God to come in and co-author your money story. When you make the choice to trust God and do what he says with your money, you're not only prioritizing God and his purposes, you're also inviting him in to help you make your money decisions, to ask you to bless your finances, to do more with what you've got than what you can do with what you've got. And God will do that if you just let him, if you just invite him in. We all have a money story, and your money story is bigger than your money story. Well, today I want to do something kind of cool. I want to introduce you to and let you hear from the person I know who has the most interesting money story. Like, you're going to find this person's money story fascinating. She is also one of the most fun and generous and encouraging people I know. And so I'm going to interview her via Zoom so that you can meet her and her story, hear her story. And so here is that interview. Well, hey, everyone. This is Chantel Ray Finch. Hi, Chantel.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So glad you're joining us today. So Chantel is in Virginia Beach, where I started church in 1998. And I think 2000, Chantel was in a small group that I was leading with my wife. And it was just about 15 of us who got together every Thursday night. And we shared life together. We studied the Bible together. We grew. We laughed a lot because of Chantel, because she's just super fun. Chantel was a high school math teacher, but she impressed me so much that when we needed to hire a children's pastor, I prayed. Our team interviewed her. We knew she was the person. And so Chantel and I started working together, what was that like, Chantel?
Oh, it was awesome.
You may not be completely honest right now, but it was pretty awesome.
It was. I honestly, that first of all, that small group that we were in, I was thinking about, I don't think I've ever had a small group that I connected with more. And I think you're such an amazing small group leader. I'm so blessed that I got to kind of be under your tutelage because I've never actually been in a small group that gelled that way. And I still love all those people. You
Yeah.
know, I think if any of those people would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I would be like, "Where are you? I'm coming," because that's how much we connected with
Yeah.
that group. Don't you think?
Totally, 100%. Yep, super, super cool. Well, Chantel started working for me. She's awesome. She's just one of the most passionate, hardworking people I've ever gotten to work with. She loved her volunteers. She loved the kids. She loved the parents. So in a minute, I'm going to tell you. I want to ask Chantel to tell you what she did after she worked for me, and what happens in her life after she worked for me is kind of insane. Like I would say, it's newsworthy. In fact, right now, if you're maybe going, who cares about this Chantel person? She seems nice, but who cares? Hang on, because her story is crazy. But before we do that, we're going to talk about our money story today. And so, Chantel, would you tell us, I guess, kind of the beginning of your money story?
Yeah, so I started out before I was working for you. I made $9 an hour at 20 hours a week at Coastal Community Church. I was the youth director there, and I was as broke as you possibly could imagine. And I was actually waiting tables at night because I was only working 20 hours a week. So at night, even though I was getting paid, let me clarify, I was getting paid for 20 hours a week, but I was
Right.
really working about 40, 50 hours a week and then also waiting tables at night. So I'm making about 180 bucks a week plus making some extra money on tips. But I literally at that time had like maybe $4 in my account, $6 in my account. I mean, that's how broke I was at any one given time. And I was literally buying groceries on my credit card. I was buying toothpaste, laundry detergent. I mean, you name it. I didn't have the money. So everything was going on the credit card. So I literally was listening to a sermon and they said it was Malachi 3:10 and he was like, test me in this and see if I won't throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you won't have room for it. And so I was sitting there thinking, well, I've got $4 in my account right now, but the preacher's talking and saying, test me. And so I was like, well, if the check bounces, I'll just be like, well, you're the one who said test me, so I'm just going to write the check. What the heck? And
And
so I
the
wrote the
test me
check.
was that verse is about tithing, right? So it's saying test me and giving 10% of whatever you earn. That's the test
Yes.
me you're
So
talking
he
about. Yeah.
said, test me.
Yep.
I want you guys to just try it to give 10%
Right.
of your income.
Yep.
So I wrote a check for, I think it was like $30 that week because plus tips, I had made money in tips. So I was like, okay, I made about 30 bucks. And so I wrote the check and then in the mail the next day, I went and there was a check on Monday from Dominion Power for like $320. And I was like, what? But what it was is when you're young and you have to put a deposit down for Dominion Power because your credit isn't good because they want to have it as a backup. So I guess they keep it in an account. And once you've been paying for a while, they said, okay, they gave it to me with interest. So it must have been $300 plus $20 in interest. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. So that was kind of my first experience that I had with tithing.
Cool. And so after that, you become a teacher, and then after that, you start working for me. Is that kind of it?
Actually, no. Actually, what happened was I was working, making $9 an hour at 20 hours a week. And then right after I started tithing, I got a job with you making $30,000. So I went from making $9 an hour to 30,000 after I started tithing.
Not 30,000 an hour, 30,000 a year.
Yeah, a year, a year.
Right. So yeah, so God says, hey, if you give, I'm going to bless you. Like I'm going to be a part of your money story, and I'm going to help you move along. So you experience that, you start making more money, and you're doing great. I loved working with you. Our staff loved working with you. But then you come to me one day and you tell me basically that you feel like God is moving you on, that you've been praying, that you felt like God was telling you that you're supposed to do this next thing. Um, Man, there are some people in life that you get to know and you just learn to trust their prayer life and trust their relationship with God. And Chantel was definitely that kind of person for me, that like, I just knew she had this genuine relationship with God, that she trusted God, that she prayed and listened. And so it was disappointing to hear that, but I'm like, man, I trust you. And if God's moving you on, God moves you on. And so sad to lose you, but wanted to honor your decision to leave and just kind of, not that you needed my blessing, but gave you my blessing. So tell us what happens next.
Yeah, I do. I just remembered one more thing that was
Okay.
a big, really big blessing when
Yeah.
I just started tithing. So I told you I was putting everything on my credit card, right? And at that time, it was over $10,000. And I called my aunt because just the payments on a $10,000 credit card was so much, and it just kept growing and growing. And my aunt, I had called my aunt and I was telling her, and she said, you know what? The interest you're paying on this is ridiculous. So she was like, if you promise you will cut up that credit card and you'll never use it again, I'm going to pay off your credit card. So she actually paid my credit card off if I agreed to cut it up. And I think she was like, you can pay me like, $100 a month, to kind of pay it back. But then after a few months, she was like, you don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to pay me back anymore.
Right.
So that was another really cool
Yeah.
blessing that happened once I started trusting him.
And it's so cool. We have dozens of stories of that like of when we trusted God, either giving 10%, or there have been times where we're like, all right, for whatever reason, we're going to give extra. There's this thing we want to give to, and it's like, this is going to hurt to give this much. But there's a saying, it's maybe a little cheesy, but it's so true, that you can't outgive God. That when you give, he always gives back to you bigger than, and it's not always money. Who knows what it might be, but that God blesses you for blessing others by giving. All right. So you decide, man, I've got nothing, but I'm gonna trust God and start tithing. You start tithing, giving 10% back to God, and He starts blessing you in these cool ways. You start working with me, which is the greatest blessing of all.
Of course.
And then you come to me and you say, hey, I'm gonna go do something different. And I say, all right, go for it. You leave. What happens next?
Yeah, so right around that time, I had listened to a sermon from a guy named Rick Warren, and he had written a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. And that book is actually the best-selling book besides the Bible, the novel that's nonfiction in the world. And he actually makes so much money from writing that book that the church doesn't even pay him a salary. And so he currently gives 90% of his income and lives on 10%. And I was listening to that sermon, and after I was done, I felt kind of that small whisper from God. And he said to me, that's what I want you to do, Chantel. I want you to live on 10% and give 90% away. And I was like, what? We just started giving 10%. You want me to go from 10% to 90%? I mean, I wasn't making a lot of money at that time. And so he said, you know what I want you to do is just do 3% more every year. So if you start at 10%, then go to 13 next year, and then 16. And so I started writing it down. I literally started writing it, and I would say, okay, how old would I have to be? And so I started adding up 3%, 3%, and it would be at age 54. So at age 54, my plan is to give 90% of my income away. And so currently this year I'm at 67%. But then as I get older, it'll get up to, by the time I'm 54, my goal is to get to 90%.
Wow. So tell me that's awesome. I guess first, let's talk about, I have a couple questions I want to ask you. First, what are some just of the lessons that you learned along the way? Because so many people who are going to be watching this and listening to this are new to all this. It's like, this is an intimidating and new idea to give away some of my money. It's like, I don't have enough money and you're telling me to give money away. And so I know you've spent a lot of time studying what the Bible says about giving. You've had a lot of experiences in giving. And so what are some of the lessons you learned along the way about you being a giver and God being a giver, and just whether it's in the Bible or just personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, when I started looking up the word give, the word pray comes up like 370 times. The word love comes up over 700 times. But the word give comes up over 2,000 times in the Bible. And I believe it's because God's a giver. And I love the verse Proverbs 12:31 that says, whoever is generous to the needy honors God. And I just feel like generosity just really draws people closer to God because it's such a faith thing, and you have to draw closer to God when you're giving that money to Him. And one of my favorite analogies is a story that happened with my son, and it's actually happened 3 times. Now he knows the story, so it doesn't happen anymore. But I think maybe he was like 4 and maybe like 6 and like maybe 4, 5, and 6. I think it happened. One time it was at McDonald's. One time it was at Chick-fil-A. But anyway, I took my son to McDonald's to buy him some fries, and I was like, I'm trying to be good. I'm not going to have any, but it was smelling so good. The fries were smelling so good that I kind of reached back and I took one of his French fries, and he was like, Mom, you can't have any of these fries. Those are my fries. And my first reaction was just like, wait a minute. First of all, you would have no French fries if it wasn't for me. I bought you here. I drove you here. I bought the French fries. I paid for the fries. I handed you the fries. And honestly, you wouldn't even have any, first of all, if it wasn't for me. And number 2, I could in an instant literally reach back and take all of them away if I wanted to. Or I could say, no more until after dinner, or no more right now. That's all you can have. I could take them away instantly. On the other hand, I could go back and buy him 3 more large fries if I wanted to. Like, I didn't need his fries. I could have gone back and bought myself 4 large fries or 100 large fries if I wanted to. I had plenty of money at the time to be able to buy those fries. But I just really wanted Kyle to learn unselfishness. Like, I wanted him to learn how to share. And as soon as that happened, and every time it has happened, I realized that's just how God is. Like, He doesn't need our money. He really just wants our hearts. And it's happened to me with Shayla at the grocery store. Same thing. Like, she said, can I buy a can of Pringles? And she opened it up, and at the counter, I was like, hey, can I have one? I think I grabbed one, and she was like, hey, they're my Pringles. And I literally just took the Pringles and threw them in the trash can right at the cash register. She didn't say anything. The cashier didn't say anything. And from there on, she already knew what was going on. And I think that, generosity is one of those things that if you can just every time kind of get to the place where you go, you know what, I just want to give a little bit more than I did last year, or I want to give a little bit more than I did yesterday. And it's just constantly reminding yourself, like, God doesn't need my money. He just needs my heart, is something I try to remind myself on a regular basis.
I love that. And I love it. There's so many great lessons out of those stories. But one is, the Bible doesn't tell us that we're not giving our money to God. We're giving back to God what He's given to us. Just like with those French fries. It's like, those were your fries that you gave. And so He wasn't really giving you a fry. You're taking back what's yours. You paid for it. And so that's one of the ideas that really transformed my thinking about giving was like, I'm not giving God anything. He's letting me keep 90% of His money and asking me to give back 10% to Him of His money. That's a really good deal. If I think it's 100% of my money, then maybe I could feel like I'm getting ripped off having to give 10% away. But if He gives me, if I gave a kid $100 and said, hey, give me 10 back, he just got a really good deal that he got to keep 90 of my $100. And so when you realize it all belongs to God, it just really changes your whole attitude about giving, I think.
Yeah. And, I do want you to know that, and this, for 20 years, I never even told anyone that I was doing this. I mean, I didn't tell you. I didn't tell anyone for the longest time that I was doing this. And the reason was because I didn't want people to think I was like bragging about it or anything. But finally, God one day said to me, He was like, the reason why you're giving 90% of your income and living on 10% is because you heard that story of Rick Warren and he shared it. And he wanted to do that, not to brag, but just to encourage others. And I finally got to the place where I was like, yeah, like if I don't share what God has put on my heart, then maybe I can encourage someone to just not that you have to give 90%, but just that maybe you would just say, you know what? I am encouraged now to just give a little bit more. And the weird part is that if you give 10%, God just does so much more with the 90%. Or if you gave 20%, that 80% left over just somehow works. And you just can't explain it because you're like, wait, how does this work? And it just does. And it's really hard to explain until you've done it.
Yeah, that is so true. I've had so many people over the years. I mean, between our church in Virginia Beach and our church here in Las Vegas, so many people who say, they're like, all right, I'm going to try it. And they're scared. And then they come back to me months later, a year later, years later, and say, I don't understand. Like, we used to be stressed about money. We didn't have enough. And then we started giving away 10%. And now we're not stressed and we have enough. Like that, the math doesn't work. But it's like, well, if we have a supernatural God who's bigger than math and bigger than our circumstances, then we need to allow for something supernatural to happen. And that's what God does. He blesses us in that way, which is so cool. And I love what you said. It builds trust. The relationship we're supposed to have with God is that we trust him. And it's so easy to believe in God, believe in Jesus, and go through life not really needing to trust him for much. But one of the things that forces you to trust him is when you start giving generously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before I ask you the last question, I think I want to ask you, but anything else, and if not, it's okay. But anything else just along the way that has helped you thinking about giving, or whether it's something you read in the Bible or something, just an experience you had? If not, I'll jump to my last question for you.
I think a lot of it has to do with what you're giving first. So that's kind of one of the things. Like an example that I would give is, let's pretend for a second that you build fences. And so you say, okay, I've got all these people paying, let's say it was $3,000 for the job. And after you pay for all the materials and you have a crew of guys that are helping you, you're left with $1,000. So once you have that $1,000, and I wish I had like some dollar bills because it would be easier to show. But if you had that $1,000, the very first $100 is the money that is important for me to go, I'm giving you this money first. And just so you know, like, it's basically me trusting you that you're going to, with the other $900 that I have, be able to provide. And so that's just kind of a good example of, for me, like, remember, I had $4 in my bank account when I decided to give that money. And it was a huge test of faith for me. And what I see people doing a lot of times is they say, okay, here's my $1,000, right? And they go, okay, I'm going to put this money aside for mortgage. I'm going to put this money aside for groceries. I'm going to put this aside for car insurance. Oh, look, there's not enough money to give to God. See? That's what happens. Like, he didn't provide for me. And that's not really the way that it works. And so for me, every experience I've had is that I feel like when I gave that money first, that was me saying to God, okay, I really trust you. I don't know how the math doesn't work. If I don't give it to you first, the rest of it just somehow does work, and I can't really explain it. But every person I know, has told me the same thing, because it's almost like, I know this is a weird way to say it, but it's like when you don't tithe, you never will be able to afford to do anything, because it seems like it's almost like a curse. It's like, oh, my dishwasher now breaks, and it's like a rabbit trail. It's like the dishwasher's broke, now my car needs to be fixed, now this needs to be done, and now I have nothing left. I wanted to tithe, but I couldn't. And so that's just a really big thing, because it's really, again, about your heart and you saying, God, I really trust you in this. And every time I've kind of stepped out, it has been, where God's provided. But I do want to give you one more story where God, it's not that he didn't provide, but it was very stressful. So at one point I was like, really doing well. Like we were just like crushing it. Like it felt like I was just blessing our business more and more. And I was like, well, I'm at 67%. Why don't I just jump to 90%? Like, boom, like, let's just do it. And so I didn't really do it in prayer. I just was like, let's do it. I'm just going to step out by faith and start giving 90%. And I was really stressed. Like, I felt like everything was kind of coming down and it just wasn't working. And I finally prayed about it and I'm like, well, wait, what's going on? Like, I'm trying to give 90 and I'm not able to make it on this 10%. And God said to me, that's not what I called you to do. Like, you were giving way more. Like, we already had a plan. Like, I already told you what to do. I told you to specifically give 3% more until you got to the 90, and you're not there yet. You're trying to jump the gun. And so that was a real big lesson for me where I was like, wait. So when you're listening to this, you have to put, what is God telling you to do? Maybe you're at 10% right now and God's saying, okay, I want you to give 11% or 12% or whatever it is that he's putting on your heart. And maybe 10% is all he's asking you to give. So, and you can be okay with that. Maybe you just go, okay, well, I can just give a tiny bit more here, or a tiny bit more here. It's truly something that's so specific that you have to pray about. What is God asking you to give? But I do believe that I think the Bible is clear that 10% should be your minimum. So wherever God's leading you from that point, I believe that he will provide when you step out by faith for the 10%.
Love it. Yep. That's so good. Thank you. All right. So the one last thing I want to ask you, and thank you again so much for joining us. But so you come to me and you say, hey, I think God's moving me on. Vince, you're the best thing ever. You didn't say that, but I feel like I'm supposed to do this next thing. And I said, all right, this stinks, but I trust you. Go for it. And so, and you're not somebody who brags. And so I kind of want to ask you to brag, but like, you decide, well, way early on when you had $4, you're like, okay, God, I'm going to give you 10%. And you start, getting blessed and just following God in that way. And then you feel like, you hear this sermon from Rick Warren, and I want to get to a place where I can give 90% of my income. You leave the job with me and you start doing real estate. And just tell us a little bit of how has that gone for you? Because I think it's just such an amazing story of, there's a verse in the Bible I love. It says, God says that he will be faithful to those who are faithful, that he will prove himself faithful to people who are faithful. And it's like, God's going to bless you if you follow him. And I think you're just such a crazy illustration of that. So just tell us a little bit about what's happened from you starting out,
Yeah.
as a youth pastor with me, to go, I'm going to go try real estate, to what's happened in the last, I don't know how many years it's been, 15 years or so.
Yeah. So my very first year in real estate, I sold more houses than anyone in Hampton Roads. I made Rookie of the Year. I think it was like 53 houses that first year.
Hampton Roads is like the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. It's like about 5 cities, about 1.5 million people. Keep going. Sorry.
And then I opened up my own brokerage, Chantel Ray Real Estate, and we were on Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, like year after year after year. And then I just recently changed the name of the company to Canzel Realty. It's CAN Zell, like Canzel, because I didn't want my name to be in it, because I knew that I wanted it to be a national company and I wanted to have a suggestive trademark. So, and now we're in 14 states nationwide. So, and I just heard that we have 2 more states that we're opening up. So it's just been a huge ride. We've been growing every year, and God's definitely been faithful.
It is crazy. So so she was a youth pastor and said, I'm going to go try real estate. And it's about 15 years later is now got a real estate, a company that is in 16 states. So just wild. And so thank you for being faithful to God. Thank you for being generous. Chantel's been very generous with our church. She wouldn't ever talk about this, but there's been times where I've called her and said, we need help with this or that. If you've been in the Verve building, some of you are watching from all over the place. We have people who are part of Verve now from all over the country, but the garage door we have on one of the kids' room, that's really cool. Chantel, I called her, and we used to have a curtain there, and kids were getting like lost in the curtain and hiding themselves in the curtain. I was like, Chantel, we call this room the garage. It would be really cool to have like a garage door. Could you help me? And she's like, yep. She's just been so awesome to me, to Verve. And so I just thank you for that. And thank you for being faithful to God and for the story that you have with money, because it's inspiring. And you gave when you had little, and God's blessed you in big ways, and you continue to give. So thank you. Man, I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope Chantel inspired you like she does me. You know, so many people think, I'll give more when I have more. But Chantel started giving faithfully, generously when she had less. And God blessed her, just like he promises he will. He's given Chantel more so that she can give more. That's what the Bible says. It says that God gives us more. He gives to us generously so that we can be generous and give more away. And that's exactly what Chantel has done. So cool. I want to be more like Chantel. I want to give more generously, and I hope you do. And to help you with that, as a place to start, we're doing a 90-day tithe challenge with a money-back guarantee to help you take that first step into tithing. To make it easier, we're going to encourage you to try tithing to God for the next 90 days. So you bring the full tithe. Tithe means 10%. In the Bible, God has told us to give him back. He's given all that we have to give him back 10% by giving it to him through our church, through your church or whatever ministry that you're a part of. So you give God the full 10% for 90 days. And if 90 days from now you're not convinced, if God has not blessed your life, if you're sorry you did it, you're like, this was a mistake, then we'll just give you your money back. No questions asked. We're totally serious about this. One thing is you have to give online or through the Verve app, because it's not going to work if you come in 90 days and you say, hey, trust me on this. I gave $10,000. It was all in cash, so you don't know it was from me, but I gave $10,000 and I would like it all back. No. First of all, we didn't get $10,000 in cash. But second of all, this is not the honor system. We need a record of your giving, which we can have if you give online or through the Verve app. And so you have to give online or through the Verve app. And again, you have to tithe, which is 10th, which is what God promises to bless. That's why we're saying, hey, God's going to bless you for doing this, but he promises to bless 10th, not 9th or 8th or 7th or 6th or 5th or 4th. And one last thing, it's got to be to Verve. Okay. You can't say, hey, I gave 10% to somewhere else. I gave them my money, but now I want my money back from you. No, like 10% to us through the Verve app, through the Verve online giving. You can find that at verve.cc. Verve.cc you can give. You give 10%. If you're unsatisfied, if you feel like God has not blessed you, we'll give you your money back. Why are we doing this? To help you trust God. To help you trust God. To help you choose the right money story for your life. I am writing a money story with my life. Part of it is, part of my life story is my money story. And my money story is way bigger than just my money story. It shows where my heart is. And the same is true with you. I want us to live out stories of generosity because God is a generous God. And so we want to respond to his generosity with generosity, which is what he's asked us to do. Jesus is generous. We want to become more like Jesus. And so I'm going to pray. And then our band's going to lead us in a song. And then we've got just a last kind of closing announcement or two for you. I hope you've been inspired today to live a generous life. And if you want to try this tithing thing out as God has asked you to, I hope you'll try 90-day money back guarantee. Give it a try. Let's pray. God, thank you for being a generous God. Thank you for sending Jesus because you're generous. Jesus, thank you for being generous. Thank you for generous people like Chantel who inspire me that I can give more because God, I want to give more. I want to be generous the way you're generous. I want to invest my money in eternal things rather than in the small temporary things I'm always tempted to spend it on. God, I pray that everyone who watches or listens to this is inspired to be more generous. Maybe people who have never given would give for the first time. Maybe people who have never tithe would try giving 10% and see if you don't bless them. See if you don't throw open the floodgates of heaven just like you promised. God, thanks for being an awesome God. And as we go into this time where we're just going to sing a song to you, God, help us to remember how great you are, how generous you've been with us. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.